How did life begin? This is one of the most fundamental and challenging questions we've ever faced. For generations, scientists have worked to solve this incredible puzzle, trying to understand how non-living matter could come together to create a living being. This quest drives researchers to the farthest corners of our planet and even deep into space, all in search of life's origins. Our world is overflowing with life, from the highest peaks to the deepest ocean trenches. But how did it all start? How did life emerge on a planet that was once completely barren? It's a question that fascinates everyone, as people naturally want to know where they came from. Science is now making huge strides toward answering this ancient question. Extraordinary theories are being explored by leading minds around the globe. Some suggest life began in a warm volcanic pool. Others think it started deep on the ocean floor. There are even those who believe it developed in the vast darkness of space. It's an exciting time to be studying the origin of life, because we now believe there are scientific ways to tackle the problem. Yet so many mysteries remain. We are driven to understand what's on our own planet and what might exist out in the universe. It's a subject of endless fascination. A first step is to figure out where life began. For a long time, it was assumed life started on Earth. Then, in 1903, Swedish chemist Svante Arrhenius proposed a radical idea called panspermia. His theory suggested life was created in space or on another planet, with the seeds of life spreading to new worlds. NASA scientist Scott Sanford investigates the possibility that life's ingredients may have come from space. Panspermia isn't totally impossible. We know material from Mars has reached Earth. So, if life existed on Mars, it could have been delivered here. But even if panspermia explains how life arrived on Earth, it doesn't explain how life started in the first place. Sanford isn't convinced life itself was delivered. However, he believes some of the starting materials, the building blocks of life, came from outer space, delivered by comets. Comets bring building blocks, not living systems. They deliver the components from which living systems might be made. Comets are mostly water and dust, with traces of carbon dioxide, methanol, and ammonia, all frozen into a giant, dirty snowball. Sanford believes they also contain small amounts of organic compounds, some of life's building blocks. But there's a puzzle. How did they get there? These building blocks are almost always made by living things. They are complex, carbon-based molecules like proteins, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. So how did they end up on a comet? Solving this riddle is key to understanding this theory of life's origin. Sanford suspects the unusual conditions on comets might lead to the formation of these organic molecules. He set up an experiment to test his idea. His first task was to recreate the extreme cold of space where comets roam, achieving temperatures near -450 degrees Fahrenheit. To understand how cold that is, consider what happens to air cooled below -300 degrees Fahrenheit. It becomes liquid. You can demonstrate this with a balloon filled with air. When placed in liquid nitrogen, the air inside cools and some gases turn to liquid. Removing it, the balloon lies flat, but as it warms, the liquid turns back to gas and inflates the balloon. This happens because liquid nitrogen is extremely cold. In fact, this liquid nitrogen is positively tropical compared to the temperatures used in these simulation experiments. Sanford introduced substances found on comets, like ammonia, carbon dioxide, and methanol, into his comet simulator. They instantly froze. The sample was then bombarded with radiation from a hydrogen lamp, simulating what happens when a comet receives cosmic rays and gamma rays. and then passes near the sun. Radiation and heat can transform simple molecules into an array of organic compounds, from proteins to amino acids. Sanford uncovered the secret of this transformation. Some comets orbit the sun in highly elliptical paths. When far from the sun, the irradiated molecules are locked in place, frozen in solid ice. But as they get closer, things warm up and the molecules can move and react. When you warm the ice so things can move a little, they start to find each other and react. They don't react with their preferred, most stable partner. They react with whoever is next to them, creating marriages of convenience. As a result, the chemistry isn't what you'd see in a typical lab. Sanford showed how life's building blocks can be created on a comet. But how do they get to Earth's surface? A comet can deliver material in several ways. The whole comet could crash into the planet, but that's rather destructive. More elegantly, a comet can shed dust, as seen in its tail. That dust can hit the planet's upper atmosphere, slow down without burning up, and settle to the surface. We have comet dust raining down on us all the time. It's an incredible theory that comets could rain down the chemistry set needed to start life. In February 1999, NASA launched a bold mission to intercept a comet and return with a sample, a chance to test Sanford's theory. After 5 years of flight, the Stardust probe reached its target near a comet called Wild 2. Dust particles from the comet's tail streamed into a honeycomb collector filled with a special aerogel. When NASA scientists analyzed the dust, they discovered a vast array of complex organic chemicals, including amino acids and hydrocarbons. This confirmed Sanford's theory that comets contain the building blocks of life. When you want to make life on a planet, you don't necessarily have to start from scratch on that planet. Compounds delivered from outer space could play important roles in getting everything going. It's amazing to think life could have been kick-started using organic building blocks from space. But one British scientist thinks life itself was created on board a comet. Does that mean we are all descended from an alien life form? The search for how and where life began has puzzled scientists for generations. Chandra Wickramasinghe, a professor of astronomy at Cardiff University, agrees comets had a role in life's birth, but he believes life itself began on a comet. Comets are the best places for life to originate. Our solar system is surrounded by 100 billion comets, so you multiply the odds in favor of life starting on any one of those comets over Earth by a huge factor. Wickramasinghe proposes the organic molecules inside comets came together to make the first single-celled life forms. It's a bold and controversial theory. At the beginning, we were regarded as heretics. We might have been burned at the stake in medieval times. We were certainly mavericks. Wickramasinghe's radical claim is that cold, icy comets contain not only complex organic compounds, but also the other essential ingredient for starting life: liquid water. The water forms when radioactive isotopes decay, giving off heat and melting the ice at the comet's center. Think of a dirty snowball comet, hard frozen on the outside at -300 degrees Fahrenheit. Radioactive elements in the comet would heat it up from the center. You can simulate this by putting it in a microwave. These radioactive elements in the middle of the comet release energy, heating it from the inside. When the inside is heated by these radioactive sources, the interior melts into a gooey liquid, while the outer crust remains intact, frozen, and cold. This gooey liquid interior, heated by radioactive sources, is chock full of organic building blocks and a lot of liquid water. It's thought life originated in this gooey pool in the middle of a comet. In 2005, NASA engineers chose the comet Tempel 1 for a daring mission. They planned to smash a probe into the comet, exposing its inner core. The results could prove Wickramasing's theory. This mission tested engineers' abilities to the limit. An 820-pound payload had to travel across space to intercept a comet moving at 10 times the speed of a bullet. After 6 years of planning, on January 12, 2005, the Delta rocket carrying the Deep Impact probe launched. After a 268,000-mile journey, the impactor, about the size of a school desk, separated from the mothership and hurtled toward the comet. It scored a direct hit. Images from space and Earth-based telescopes showed the moment of impact. For the first time, the secrets inside a comet were exposed. From space, the Spitzer Infrared Space Telescope analyzed signals from the compounds in the plume of comet dust. An amazing array of ice and fine dust particles was seen. But to everyone's surprise, the data also showed the comet contained clay, the same kind found on Earth, and it's thought the only way to make clay is with liquid water. Wickramasing believes this is proof that Tempel 1 once had a gooey, liquid water interior. With liquid water and organic molecules, comets could be incubators for life. Comets like Tempel 1 could be packed with microorganisms ready to seed life throughout the galaxy. We on Earth are connected to a much bigger cosmos. Life on Earth is part of a connected chain of being that extends to the remotest corners of the galaxy, maybe the universe. We have cousins out there. But whether life began inside a comet or on Earth, what's still unknown is how it happened. How did non-living organic molecules combine to create the first living thing? This big birth is one of science's big unanswered questions. The ancients believed life could emerge spontaneously. A frog from stagnant water or flies from rotten food. In the 19th century, Charles Darwin proposed life emerged only once, many millions of years ago. He suggested this big birth led to all life today through evolution. Starting with the simplest life form, more complex creatures evolved. As each new species emerged, it formed a new branch on the tree of life. Working backward, we can see our ancestors. Scientists propose all life on Earth is descended from a single microscopic organism, known as the last common ancestor. Understanding this ancient microbe will help uncover the secrets of the Big Birth. The quest to understand life's birth has sent scientists looking for clues around the world and to the far reaches of the universe. They want to understand the moment inert chemicals came together to produce the first living thing. One approach is to unravel 4 billion years of evolution, traveling back in time to uncover the oldest, simplest forms of life. The Holy Grail is a theoretical 4-billion-year-old microbe, the last common ancestor. This tiny cell gave rise to all life on the planet, and close relatives may still be alive today. There are an estimated 3 billion separate species of microorganism on Earth, but less than 1% have been discovered. Hunting them down is NASA biologist Dr. Lynn Rothschild. All you have to do is look under a microscope. They are incredibly cool. When I was 8, I looked through a microscope and fell in love. I realized they are crucial for studying evolution, so that's the direction I went. I get to have fun and study something important. Rothschild traveled 14,000 feet above sea level to the Altiplano in southern Bolivia. It's a hostile landscape where temperatures regularly drop to -4 degrees Fahrenheit, and has some of the highest recorded ultraviolet radiation on Earth. But it could be the perfect place to find a close relation of the microbe that gave rise to all life, the last common ancestor. Coming up into the living Andes seems like the last place to look for early life. But we found organisms up here that are probably like the earliest organisms on Earth. Maybe we'll even find one similar to our last common ancestor. Rothschild scours the Earth for microbes living in extreme conditions. These microorganisms, called extremophiles, may be closely related to the most ancient forms of life. You have to go to unusual environments to find ecosystems that are just microbial. I hope those organisms prove to be an extremely deep branch, much closer to our last common ancestor than you and me. Rothschild's next stop is a landscape of boiling mud, where superheated steam warmed by shallow magma shoots from the ground. Hot geysers like this would have been present on early Earth, so Rothschild hopes to find life in these extreme conditions. The earliest common life form were all descended from lived in very high temperatures. Rothschild works meticulously, logging the temperature and position of each sample. A great challenge is that even the most basic microorganisms today are incredibly complex. On a microscopic scale, a cell's intricate complexity is clear. From reproduction to converting energy, every process is carried out by an extraordinary interplay of complex organic molecules. But the ancient microbes Rothschild tracks in Bolivia could give clues to the first organisms. As the sun sets, the temperature plummets. Rothschild takes refuge from the harsh environment where these modern cousins thrive. Overnight, temperatures drop well below zero. The next morning, the vehicle won't start. Rothschild also feels the effects of thin air at 14,000 feet. It's not much fun for us when our oxygen levels drop just a few percent. But on early Earth, there was no free oxygen whatsoever. So to time travel back is a huge price to pay for us humans. Rothschild's next hunting ground is Laguna, Colorado. Its red color gives a clue about the unusual type of microbe she hopes to find. This part of Bolivia has one of the highest UV counts in the world. The thin atmosphere at this high altitude only partially blocks the sun's radiation, making conditions closer to Earth 4 billion years ago. When life first arose, UV levels were incredibly high, vastly higher than today. By coming up here, even though we can't simulate early Earth because we couldn't live under those conditions, we can time travel a step back and get some idea what it was like for organisms in the past. Rothschild measures UV radiation levels. These readings are amazing. It's the middle of winter, and we already have extremely high UV readings. They'll be even higher by noon. Readings here can reach twice the average of a California beach. Just as our skin is in danger from too much UV, the microbes here are at constant risk. Rothschild carries out a simple experiment to see what they face. I'm looking at the effect of ultraviolet radiation from the sun on naked DNA. The naked DNA is a solution containing DNA molecules stripped of any protection from a cell. I'll seal it up and leave it in the sun for a few hours. After just 2 hours of UV bombardment, the DNA shows severe damage. UV levels on early Earth would have been about 100 times higher. Many scientists think our last common ancestor had to live in the dark ocean depths or buried underground for protection. But the microbes here survive. Their red pigment helps protect their DNA. Just like we suntan to protect ourselves, these organisms produce red pigment. But while UV radiation damages DNA, there's a flip side. UV may have helped drive evolution. It might even have had a role in kickstarting the Big Birth and the evolution of the last common ancestor. Ultraviolet radiation produces mutations. Mutations aren't all bad. Without mutations, we wouldn't have evolution. You need change in genetic material for organisms to change. Our world would be very different if nothing had ever changed. We wouldn't be here. Rothschild's study of these microbes will help scientists understand how the first organisms survived hostile conditions on early Earth and give a clearer picture of our last common ancestor. But another mystery remains. How did the last common ancestor form? What's the link between building blocks and the Big Birth? It turns out some answers may come from an extraordinary place in the ocean depths. The question of how life began has troubled scientists for centuries. Darwin's theory explains how species evolved, but we still don't understand how the first living thing was created, how evolution began. Creating life was science fiction. Then, in 1953, a bold experiment began the modern scientific investigation into life's origin. Stanley Miller tried to recreate early Earth conditions when scientists think life began. John Chalmers was an associate of Miller and now works in his lab. Stanley was the first to have a research program directed toward the origin of life. It changed ideas from mere speculation to a research program. Since Darwin's time, much has been learned about Earth 4 billion years ago. It was extraordinarily violent. The Earth had just formed and was bombarded by meteors, asteroids, and comets. The atmosphere was very different. Miller's experiment recreated these conditions in the lab. Flasks contained what he believed were key components of the early atmosphere: methane, ammonia, and hydrogen. Warm water represented the early ocean. The key component was a Frankenstein-like bolt of lightning, simulating electric storms on the young planet. Miller started the experiment, and the next day he was in for a shock. The liquid in one jar had changed color. When he analyzed it, he found something remarkable. It was packed with chemicals called amino acids, what biologists and chemists call the building blocks of life. They're very important because all terrestrial life is made of amino acids. Miller's experiment showed how simple molecules could transform into life's building blocks. But these are still a long way from life. How do building blocks create life? One clue came from a special package delivered to Earth from space. In September 1969, residents of Murchison, Australia, heard a loud bang. A 200-pound meteorite fell, showering the village with rock. These space rocks have been intensely studied. Dave Deemer at UC Santa Cruz got a sample. There was a flash of light, rolling thunder, and minutes later, stones fell all over Murchison. There was a strange aroma in the air. Deemer extracted a compound from his meteorite piece with the same aroma. 57 billion years old, the age of the solar system. It's the oldest aroma on Earth, much older than Earth's surface by 500 million years. It smells like an old cigar butt or dirty sock. The smell gave Deemer a clue that the liquid extracted was packed with organic chemicals. Under a microscope, he saw something extraordinary. We see beautiful little glowing vesicles that look just about the right size for a bacterial cell or larger. The extract contained molecules that formed tiny bubbles or vesicles, looking like the outer membrane of a small microbe. Some compounds formed membranous structures, beautiful little cell-like compartments. We've proposed this could be a way for the first cell membranes to come about on early Earth from these molecules. Perhaps compounds delivered from space were the first steps toward life. But to form membranes, These molecules needed to be in fresh water at just the right concentration. One idea is they fell near a geyser in a warm volcanic pool. As water droplets evaporate, molecules become concentrated and form tiny vesicles. Perhaps these self-assembling membranes delivered from space were the first steps toward life, the transformation of non-living chemicals into the first cell. I don't have trouble imagining this would be a common process, and forming compartments would have been the first step towards cellular life. But a simple bubble-like membrane is still far from being alive. Scientists must figure out how all complex cell components came together for the Big Birth. This time, the answer came from a lost world undiscovered for nearly 4 billion years. In 1977, a team from Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution looked for volcanic activity 8,000 feet under the ocean. Alongside hydrothermal vents, they found an incredible undersea world. Cut off from sunlight, it thrived with never-before-seen plants and animals. Until then, many thought all ecosystems depended on photosynthesis. But here was a unique environment cut off from sunlight. This underwater world captivated Carnegie Institute researcher Dr. Robert Hazen. Imagine descending in a submarine into the black ocean depths where people thought there was nothing. They found hydrothermal vents where volcanic fluids pour from the ocean floor. And because of all that chemical energy and heat, there were living things, ecosystems with microbes, tube worms, clams, strange crabs, and more. After searching these crushing depths, they found chimney-like stacks emitting scalding hot water. Hazen had a hunch these vents could produce interesting chemistry, perhaps organic building blocks of life. He set up an experiment. It's easy. You take a bit of mineral and chemicals, put them in a gold tube, seal it, and put it at high temperature and pressure for a few hours. Open it up, and there's all this stuff inside. The stuff he found was far more exciting than imagined. We thought we'd find nothing interesting, just a few simple molecules to analyze. We were wrong. This stuff had the strongest aromatic smell. At lower temperature, it was like molasses. At 350 degrees, it smelled exactly like Jack Daniel's whiskey. People would come by and say, "You guys must be having fun." We were making the stuff of life. The aroma gave Hazen a clue he had created organic molecules. Again, these molecules assembled into membrane-like vesicles, behaving like those from the Murchison meteorite. Hazen discovered it might be possible to create cell-like membranes near deep-sea vents. But other researchers believe this underwater world provided more than a membrane. They claim all life's component parts came together here, and the Big Birth happened at the bottom of a primordial ocean. For the Big Birth, scientists believe essential elements had to work together. Life needed a container, a membrane. It needed a way to reproduce, achieved today through DNA. It needed an engine, a chemical process called metabolism that converts fuel into energy. According to Dr. Michael Russell at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, metabolism came first. Life has a job to do. You could have a modern car with an engine and a computer. Take the computer out, the car still works. Take the engine out, leave the computer, it won't. The computer is a regulator, but the engine is what's important. So we think there had to be an engine first, and that engine is metabolism. Today, the metabolism engine powering every living thing is extremely complex. But intriguingly, Russell thinks we all have traces of the first, simplest metabolic reaction buried in our cells like living fossils pointing to where life began. We can trace chemicals from early Earth to this day. For example, there are iron sulfides in our skin, a little bit of rock that reminds us where we all come from. According to Russell, we come from deep-sea vents made largely of iron sulfide. He believes this and other compounds kick-started metabolism, acting as a catalyst for a reaction between hydrogen gas streaming from vents and carbon dioxide dissolved in water. Eventually, this simple reaction evolved into complex metabolism, and eventually, metabolism required DNA as a regulator, a computer. But to start, we just needed the engine. At some point, metabolic engines acquired bodywork, a membrane. Russell's theory gives an idea of how a simple chemical reaction could drive the creation of more complex organic molecules, eventually creating the first living cell and all life on Earth. There are still gaps, but clues to life's origin are emerging. Now, a scientist claims he might put all clues together using latest lab techniques. He hopes to start life from scratch, something that hasn't happened for 4 billion years. Scientists strive to answer how life began. This quest has taken them to remote corners of the globe and deep into cells. As one group looks back 4 billion years to the Big Birth, another looks to the future. About 4 billion years after nature first created life, scientists can now redesign it. The key is understanding one extraordinary chain: DNA. DNA is made of 4 simple base molecules: adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine. Their arrangement stores information to create life. This natural technology is at the heart of all life today. Tom Knight, a computer expert at MIT, wants to reprogram DNA to make new kinds of life. Fundamentally, there is one technology of life right now, invented billions of years ago, and all we're doing is changing little bits of that technology. For thousands of years, mankind harnessed nature, rearing livestock and growing crops. Selective breeding improved yields and quality. But now bioengineers want to go further. Zero. We can think about growing things that aren't food, like nanotechnology substrates for electronic circuits. I have a student looking at placing atoms precisely on silicon surfaces. Besides creating new life forms, bioengineering gives science a chance to explain the Big Birth mystery. Instead of attacking the problem from the bottom up with basic chemistry, or top-down by unraveling evolution, scientists can use bioengineering to put life's building blocks together and create a living cell. Jack Szostak at Harvard Medical School leads this field. We're assuming someday people will figure out how to make the building blocks. What if you have them? How do you put them together? How do you organize them to act like a cell? Szostak's team set the task of building a living system in the lab. We'd like to understand the transition from making molecules to how they work together to give us life. So we want to build a simple living system to understand that transition. Scientists believe life evolved over millions of years. Szostak hopes to use bioengineering to do it much faster. We want to make things go as fast as possible. We're making building blocks and putting them together in the right environment. We'd like to get everything going in a few years, speeding things up by a factor of 100 million. Szostak hopes to create a working cell from simple building blocks. He must boil a cell down to its simplest components. One thing making the origin of life hard to think about is that all life we see is so complicated. A big challenge is creating a simpler version of DNA. Szostak believes the answer is RNA. RNA is also made of 4 base molecules, but it has only one strand, not a double helix. If you think about really early simple cells, you could store information in just RNA. You don't need DNA. Shostak's goal is to create a simple, self-replicating RNA molecule. This could eventually form a simple cell capable of duplicating itself. If successful, he may start a process of evolution. We're interested in the beginnings of life, the transition from chemistry to biological behavior. The important thing is the beginning of evolution. Once evolution begins, more complex cells will be created by natural selection. Eventually, Shostak hopes to evolve a simple, self-supporting, self-replicating biological system. Some might call it life. Shostak's work might one day connect the dots between building blocks and the last common ancestor, showing how inert chemicals combine to create life. If he succeeds, it will be the crowning moment of over a century of research by great scientific minds. Finally, we might solve the great riddle of how life began on our planet. If you found this exploration of life's origins fascinating, make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into science's biggest mysteries. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it, and share this video with anyone curious about where we all come from. Deep dives into science's biggest mysteries. Hit the like button if you enjoyed it, and share this video with anyone curious about where we all come from.